I'm happy that one more time get the opportunity to be with dear brother and sisters of Ahlul Bayt Islamic Society of New England, Zerk MIT Shia Muslim Association. As this is the second lecture of the lecture series we call Religious Landscape of Pre-Islamic Arabia, analysis based on primary and epigraphic or essentially contemporary sources. And this lecture we go with the Judaism, a survey based on primary sources. And these primary sources will be epigraphic, and then as inscriptions. And then as we'll see, it will very limited us, but it has the advantage, okay, it's a contemporary and primary. It is written by the religious believer, and it is contemporary, but we will see that it will limited us, so that will be kind of the situation. So as blessing, I will start with these verses, but which is mostly related to the views of mushrikeen. وَلَنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ لَيَقُولَنَّ اللَّهُ قُلِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ بَلْ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْغَنِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ. And then, the recitation, the translation is, if you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they will surely say, God. Say all praise belongs to God, but most of them do not know. To God belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth. Indeed, God is all-sufficient, the all-laudable. Um, okay. I kind of don't go to the introduction because we a little bit lost time. And so we had in the previous lecture, and also we had the summary of the lectures. So I use the map because the map we want we're going to need it. I show it to you, and maybe you have to come back today again. We want to talk about Judaism in the Arabia, and then we said the Arabia was this large rectangle which comes up to here, kind of, if this river was connected, it's a close to the water, So we have up Damascus, Jerusalem, and the Hera, which is near Kufa, Tabuk, which is not, this is the proper Saudi Arabia. And then the names we want to have is Taima, Hegra, Dedan, which we mentioned today. These are Northwest Arabia, and then Medina and Mecca in Hijaz. And then we know from later sources and then Quran and other one that many Jews were settled here. Khaybar was up here. So this area, we have many Jewish settlements. And one of the distinction people mention is that if the settlement or the city or the village have a wall surrounding it is usually non-Arab, and then either Jewish or Christian. And if the city or the settlement doesn't have a wall or sometimes a tent city, uh, it is Arab. So that's one distinction we have there from that time. So this is one center we were focused on, and then what records we have. And so we know from the Quran and the history of Islam, we like Jews in Medina, and then, Fadak, for example, is up north here. The one uh, we have it, the story really says that Fatima, and then Khaybar is up here. These are places agriculture was, the weather, the condition, the water was the condition. Some agriculture, especially date, can be done. And so this part, and Jews have been settled there. And then we have this southern part, which later we'll see, and we also discussed it in the context of the uh, we discussed this Yemen when we had the lecture series Quran and Yemen. We discussed it partially there. So we will discuss it today too, that the people here converted to Judaism. So this is the second center we will try to discuss. One is here and one is here, and description mostly will be by this discussion will be mostly by the inscriptions. One distinction, again, I cannot prove that by inscriptions, but it's my conjecture and partially true. I think the Jews here in the north and western part are mostly ethnically Jews. And then we'll see they may come from after fall of Jerusalem. We'll see that would immigrated here to Sinai Peninsula. We have some records of them. There are some islands even down here. There is an island called Elephantine or Elephant, something like that. I think Nile or somewhere here. which we have Jewish settlements. So they start to go around. We know them in Iran or definitely in Byzantine Empire. So, and then because these are especially Hegra, which Medina to Saleh or Medina to Hajj, uh, the city which have in palaces or in houses were built through the rocks or sand rocks, were trade routes, commercial. So we have Jewish settlements there. These, I think, are like the Jews in Medina are ethnically Jews. But the Jews here, I don't think they're ethnically Jews. I mean, we can call them ethnically Arab or whatever, ethnically Yemeni. So I think this distinction must be there partially. But it's possible because also this shouldn't be 200% because actually these were commercial centers too. This was the Arabia Felix, Arabia Prosperus, which the Romans called it. We will see that. So lots of trade from here to India, and then from here to Roman Empire. The materials which have like myrrh and frankincense, which was burned in temple, the houses which smell good to remove the moisture and kind of damp smell away. So this part of Arabia was prosperous. So mountainous, some parts of it very green. So it's possible we have two type of Jews. Jews are ethnically Jews, and then Jews which are religious, they become Jews. Uh, so this map I want you to have in mind. If I need it, I will come back to it, but I spend time on it to you guys see it. And then so so let's go forward. Just to recap the discussion last time, at least have summary of it. Regarding the sources, look, following that skeptical or revisionist criticism of regarding that pre-Islamic or after Islamic sources, and then some healthy dose of criticism also helpful. So we try to use sources at the first rank sources, which are data or material evidence, physical evidence, which these usually both primary, that is written by a witness or somebody participating in the event, and contemporary. And then, okay, these usually are material sources like architecture or coins, but for us, with inscriptions, we don't get much coins from here, or architecture is there, but we don't discuss it. But with inscriptions, and we discuss inscriptions are two type. One is monumental, somebody ordered it, someone pre-planned it. Uh, uh, the material was found, clean, prepared, and inscription was carved on it. Then is graffiti, which is not without planning, but okay, is more spontaneous, personal, and so on. So that's mostly what we rely on. And then, as I said, it has limitations and advantages. And then because we are looking to, this is primary in the sense is expression of or manifestation of religious expression, religious view by a believer. So in that sense, somebody believe, for example, here Judaism, next lecture, Christianity, the lecture after the some kind of form of polytheism, or so they express their religious view as an engravings or inscription. So they are themselves a believer, and then so that become primary, and then these are, if you dated, is the era we are looking. So we're not looking some inscription after Islam, which actually they're rare. We are looking to this pre-Islamic view, and then we can see what we can get from those inscriptions. And I'm kind of for limiting the discussion because we don't want to be this too wide. So this will be one limited angle, but it still can introduce something to us. Then there is contemporary literary evidence, if generally we can find literary, so it's written book, that is source materials, which in this context divided into primary and secondary. Primary sources, mostly Arabic, or at least somebody will be in the Arabian Peninsula wrote it. Uh, so it's Quran or Constitution and Medina, especially if you look into the beliefs of polytheists, or what we call them Gentiles, pre-Islamic Arabic poetry. And the secondary sources are non-Arabic texts, other people outside Peninsula or non-Arabic texts, wrote it about it. Maybe there are in Peninsula Syriac one, mostly in Syriac Greek, written by scholars living in the Near East. Uh, Usually they're not witnessed. For example, if they wrote about Arabs or polytheists, they're themselves not Arab or polytheist. It's like a Greek, like Herodot wrote write about the Iranians. Regarding today, actually, we also do not have much. We will see secondary sources. We don't have much talking about the Jews in Arabia by outside sources. So we don't have these contemporary secondary sources much. And our primary sources, literary one, is pre-Islamic Arabic poetry, which again, that we'll see, even that one I'm not going to discuss much. There are some pre-Islamic Arabic poetry which is done by the poet which are Jewish. But then the question is that, because we are looking to the religious belief, how much does those poems contain religious belief or are not? Somebody can be just recite a love poem or Hamasi or epic poem, and then is actually we see that Jewish poetry is pre-Islamic Jewish poetry in many senses is similar to pre-Islamic uh, polytheistic or Jahiliyyah poetry. They are mostly the same topics, the same style. Is war, love, Arabic virtues, uh, which Jahili Arabs consider respectful. Uh, their chivalry, their bravery, their wars, their loss. We will see that. So you see, actually, mostly we will be limited, and the prime, the really the our we will really limited mostly the first category, dated and datable material. And then there is non-contemporary literary evidence. This is huge, actually, because there are books which are written or written by Arabic, Persian, Greek, Syriac. They are talking about how, for example, certain people behave those times. But we discussed it. There are some question marks whether they are accurate. They are somewhat separated from the time, long 1 or 2 centuries separated from the time of writing and the time of they describing. Sometimes biases came in. It is how people try to remember or understood what was before. But I think this a little bit too much skepticism has gone through here, and then you see sometimes the author are because they're limited, they're really are making huge claims by flimsy arguments, and then at the same time are very critical are regarding the third source. But for limiting the discussion, I think I avoid the third source, but that's interesting. I think combination all three and some other techniques gradually there are books are written. They're getting some interesting evidence here, but for now, uh, so, for example, there are many, all the Islamic Sira books, Islamic history books, there are discussion about the Jews and the culture, costume, what they were doing, especially Jews in Medina or Mecca and so on. And I think many are they are very accurate, many of them, contrary to some criticisms. Okay. And also the book, sometimes I rely some stuff on this is the main reference, but I somehow deviate some aspects. A little bit. Because of time, I'm not going to go deep here. A little bit, just a reminder of the ethnic, linguistic, and tribal situation, Arabia before Islam. So this is a little bit left over of the last lecture, which we didn't find time to cover. But I think today also I will brief, if we really find time at the end, I will come back or maybe keep it for the last lecture. The only thing we have to be careful, this pre-Islamic Arabia is a large area and is not completely monolithic ethnically. Uh, and then is also this bring the issue of Arabs are defined. Nowadays Arabs are defined mostly by not ethnicity but language. Who speaks Arabic is considered Arab. So you see many people in North Africa or not sub-Saharan, about Saharan Africa are considered, or their countries are listed among Arabic countries. We have 22 of them. Countries like Sudan, Chad, uh, even Libya, or but Mali, other ones. They are speaking Arabic, but historically you cannot consider them ethnically Arab. So that's one way people identify themselves by the language of speaking or writing. And then one is ethnically. For example, regarding the Jewish one, you see the character, the way they identify themselves mostly is ethnically. And then many of them maybe do not talk Hebrew or any form of language related to Hebrew. Uh, but in Arabia, other languages where we're spoken, I will briefly mention, and other groups which maybe we do not consider them technically Arabic or present. One of them is Jewish one, but also if you go to Yemen, South will be a little bit more complicated. And then how people identify themselves is a little bit detailed discussion. Some theories have come through. There was an idea of Arabness, and then people assigning or calling these people living they're Arabs. This has an interesting history from it. We have the oldest one, a Babylonian king, maybe about 600 BC, uh, mentioned the people in Arabia as Arabs. I think one of the oldest one we have. But the area of the time we are looking, most of the inscriptions, which is actually mostly will be related to lecture 4, they identify as tribal. They because kind of they assume all they're Arab, and that's my understanding. And then they identify themselves mostly tribally. The large tribal confederates. They consider I'm Kendi or Tayyi, Ahmad or Sabai or something like that. Like in Iran, everybody in sense is Irani, but then they identify I'm Shirazi or Tehrani or Spahani, and so on. So you would see this kind of identification more. This discussion I'm doing right now is because is a little bit from the last lecture, is general. It's not per se to Judaism. When we go, I will see, we'll be more specific. So have this in mind, comes later on. And then that's again, this ethnonym or the label for ethnicity Arabs is attested, but not very often by the Arabs themselves. They didn't call themselves Arab, but there are one, but mostly by outsider people. So outsider people refer to these guys as exonym. That okay, these guys which are settling over there is Arabs. Uh, and but the meaning of it also is sometimes is not very clear, is not necessarily means the person speaking Arabic, but very often, and it doesn't also mean necessarily nomadism, which is this is the two understanding we have when we read Quran, but still this majority. Either we think Arabi means the Bedouins, Quran refer to them, or also we understood because Arabian Mubin or something like that. These are people talking Arabic. I'm not going to go but the only thing I want to mention is this. For example, uh, 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 you know, people outside Arabia sometimes refer to the Arabs, and actually this name is important, Tayyayi, which is from Thai tribe, and we have it in Farsi too. So the people, the Syriac texts, or people a little bit non-Arabs outside or Roman Empire, or a little bit the northern part of Arabia, which maybe they do not necessarily consider themselves Arab, refer the Arabs in mid southern inside the Arabian Peninsula, Hijaz, that's nomad, because they know this tribe and they call them Tayyayi from Tay, like calling Iranians Persians, only if relate or historically that people from that special part of Arabia. And the Greeks start to call them Saracens. So this have these two names are also used a lot in the period we are doing. Um, And then the region of Arabia also is a little bit, where is Arabia? Because we're first talking about Arabs, and then where is Arabia? Again, you see, although I get that big rectangle, which is a little bit wider identification, I try to cover everything, but you see, even sometimes they go wider too. They include the Arabian Peninsula and some others, a part of Mesopotamia too, which it is true. There's, in one sense, they're taking Semitic language. Again, that's, you see, there are some vagueness in it, but I don't think all these be very important for any discussion we have. You know, one important part is Yemen. We'll see that whether Yemenis consider themselves Arab or not before Islam, we're not sure. They, because they do not necessarily speak Arabic as a Semitic language, but it was different. These are before Islam. And then they civilizationally and culturally a little bit considered themselves distinct. They were Arabs, which were to the northern part of them, inside Hijaz, inside the Arabian Peninsula. So they, when referring Arab, they refer to them. So you see Yemenis, both language-wise and ethnically and culturally, a little bit distinguish themselves. And then later, after Islam, being Arab become prestigious. Then Yemenis, relying on the story of Abraham and Ishmael, and because the so many Qurayshit, many Arabs, they divide usually Arabs to groups, Adnani, Qahtanis, and Adnanis are descended of Ishmael. So, and the Qahtanis are the one over there which were there, which receiving Ismail and Hajar. And Yemenis claim descended from them, and then they start to say we were true Arabs. Because we were there, we were the son of Qahtan, and you Ismailites, or the son of Ismail, which Qurayshis claim, and northern tribes usually claim themselves they're Adnani. You come later, so you are Mustarab, we are Arab. These discussions were there, so I want you to have aware of it, but I don't think I go further because I don't think it's anything really bear to have a discussion today. If we have more deeper discussions, when go later on to politics, maybe these will be useful. And then the other thing I want to show you, there are different, I will show you this map here, but I have two other maps too, some are better. Look, this is Semitic language, the eastern branch, which is in Iraq, we don't need to know. And then the western branch. There is a branch goes to Ethiopic language and modern South Arabian languages, old South Arabian languages. These are language in Yemen, look, Sabaik. So there were languages were spoken in Saudi Arabia and Yemen area, which have died, but we have records of them, these inscriptions. And then we have very few of these have still, there are, I mean, maybe descended these old ones or other ones which exist in parallel, which is still surviving. If you go to those Yemeni villages or Omani villages, Hazaramut, or those parts, we find this, and the linguists have worked on them. And these are Ethiopic languages. Look, so these are geographically are very connected around here and here, Ethiopic languages. So these are a branch of language which are not necessarily Arabic. That's I'm saying not everybody talking Arabic. And then we have Arabic languages, which again, there are many things in between, like Safaitic and other languages, or the Proto-Arabic one, or the Mother of Arabic, which I haven't shown here. And then we have this branch, historically, actually, till 1970s, many scholars thought Arabic is this branch, closer to the southern, these branch. They're descended from this branch. But now, all the linguistic and other analysis in Arabic is Arabic is more affiliated what's happening to the north. Look, especially Quranic Arabic, Hijazi Arabic. This is more affiliated to the south, or this is more affiliated to the north? Now we believe Arabic is more to the north and coming down from the north. And then really these were a little bit different languages, different people, different culture. You have Queen Sheba, we have heard about it. Her kingdom was Sabaik, the language was Sabaik, and then that language is called Sabaik, Sabai. So the inscriptions are that language. So just have in mind, this is a little bit helpful. The Arabic is somewhat closer to Hebrew or so on. This is not the most accurate of the diagrams, but actually is a good simplified one. We can start and I will show you again. Okay. So I went a little bit uh, with some delay and longer introduction, but I try to go faster. Look, to get Arabia Judaism in Arabia, we need also have some understanding of a development of Judaism as a whole, because many of these is migrated. Uh, there are different periods. Judaism, first temple was very ancient. Solomon made it and was destroyed by Babylonians. And then when the Jews led to return by Cyrus back to Palestine, they built the second temple. This period from about 500 BC, the time of Cyrus, to about 70 Common Era, 70 AD, is called the second temple. When you read the story of Jesus and events over there, you hear the names. There were many groupings like Pharisees, Sadducees, and other ones. So it is a very uh, complicated thing. But what we are looking is after this, we are looking to the period of Second Temple Judaism, which is the temple was destroyed. Some uprising happened by the Jews, and then the Romans would put down the uprising. They destroyed the temple, and in 70 AD, 70 Common Era. And then another uprising happened 56 years later, around 130 AD. And then that was crushed, and the kind of, and not only to the temple in Jerusalem, but essentially the strong presence of Jews in Palestine. So that's it. And then from this era, we have something called Rabbinic Judaism comes to the development. This is exactly the same. Christianity as Jesus was there. We have Christian movements. We have Christian Judaism, the branch of maybe Christians which still follow Judaic law. And then we have that also other branch of Christianity. We can call it Pauline Christianity, which is rejected Judaic law. This uh, I go a little bit faster, but look, the point is this. After that second revolt, the first one around the revolt was between 66 to 73, caused the Romans destroyed the temple. And then after the second revolt, which are 132, 35, they completely really uh, caused to exile the Jewish community more or less from Palestine, and they start to spread. And that's the time that we see maybe they maybe have to move some of them to Arabia. That's a possibility. During from this period, which is exactly the period we discussed, to the appearance of the Islamic conquest, technically Jews were banned to living in Jerusalem. Uh, First Roman banned them, and then when the Christianity became the official religion empire, Christians were also hostile to the Jews. So officially they were banned to come into Jerusalem. I mean, how much this ban was really enforced, we are not sure. They got allowed to get back to Jerusalem when the Iranian army Sassanids captured Jerusalem in 614 Common Era. But again, the Persians were defeated, as Surah Al-Rum mentioned. And then, actually, I just remember I didn't congratulate occasion of MapAS. So this is because we were this is yesterday was MapAS. So some of our topic either directly is not related to MapAS, but indirectly it is. We want to see what is the situation once the Prophet came, and then for the Jews, because these events of Persian wars, exactly this capture of Jerusalem by the Persians happened 614. Prophet Mab'as was started 610. So it's just his early years of his Mab'as, for fourth year that this event happened. Again, when Persian defeated, they left Rome and banned the Jews. Again, after the Islamic conquest, after when Jerusalem was captured by Islamic army, Muslim army, uh, they were free to come back. But this is not the main idea. The main idea is this. Uh, Temple in this period, Second Temple and sacrifice was very crucial, important part of Jewish religious activity. For example, we have pilgrimage, we have Eid al-Qurban, but it's not the core of the most important or prominent part, very large part of religious activity of Muslims. Prayer is, it is important, but daily prayer is, Jama'ah prayer is, fasting is, but the Jewish one is a lot. They would sacrifice many of the things was related to the temple. So the priests which run the temple were very influential. And then people living close by, for example, it was necessary every year they go to the temple. And then, so the people living in Palestine close by always go to the temple. I mean, even Jews start to living farther from other parts of Roman Empire. They used to come to the temple. But after destruction of the temple, there is no temple to go there to do the worship. And then before the destruction of temples, synagogues have come to existence, rabbis have come to existence because still people were far, some live outside Palestine. So we have these synagogues and house of worship was produced. I mean, and then the rabbis were there teaching that, but they were influential, and many people actually like Pharisees, which are group mentioned in the New Testament related to Jesus. They're influential. People listen to them. It's a clerical people, but still the priests of temple are very dominant. But after temple is destroyed, uh, the rabbis are the shepherds, or this is a Christian term, but leading the community. And so we have a shift happening in 1 or 2 centuries that a completely a new form of worship, new idea of understanding community was developed, which is called Rabbinic Judaism, which is based on synagogues, based on the rabbis. And then one other thing they start to do, because okay, we said rabbis were existed and the synagogues existed when temple was there. And then okay, after temple was destroyed, they get more prominence. But uh, so what is qualitatively different in this rabbinic period? Yeah, is development of this oral tradition, so-called Talmud. So it is called Rabbinic Judaism, but maybe we have to call it Talmudic Judaism some way. They don't like it to call it like that, but in one sense is that. So the big change is this way, that the distinctive characteristic of Rabbinic Judaism was production of a somewhat novel interpretive tradition referred to as oral Torah. Sometimes this is called oral Torah. They say the wisdom, and sometimes they claim this is the wisdom which was between us, handed us from orally from Moses. Some aspects is similar to Hadith, but it's not. This is mostly commentary on the Torah and also elucidation of the law, again, Torah, but so on. And then, okay, some people say this oral phase wasn't that long. Yeah, it certainly doesn't go to Moses. I'm not saying there are not some of those kind of wisdoms or knowledge maybe have come down in through generations orally because they have lots of prophets too. But again, they start to put them down. And then this first produced Mishnah, and then which is a somewhat commentary on um, Torah, and then also then you start to produce Talmuds, which Talmuds, if you look, especially Islamic fiqh, has books, and the Islamic fiqh has also books, Sunni ones, Shia ones, and they're very much parallelism. Book of Tahara, book of uh, talaq or marriage or all the stuff. Very similarities. I think 30, 40 volumes. So this Talmud became. And then this Talmud, it seems it is claimed was developed at two Talmuds, two groups simultaneously, maybe independently, not completely independently. One in Palestine, uh, claim, maybe not, I mean, not necessarily Jerusalem, but around Palestine, they were doing this, and one in Babylonia, they were doing this. They claim these Talmuds are are finalized before Islam. Here put 400 common era, 500 common era. Some push it to 600 common era, but I'm thinking it's a little bit more because some. This is detailed discussions for now avoided, but you see this. Some people say even maybe end up to 7th, 8th century. So this Talmud has influenced and was influenced by what is happening in the Islamic fact, Sunni one, and then maybe Shia one by the Sunni one. Because also you see these two Talmuds are near the two capitals of Islamic empires, Umayyad Abbasid, Palestinian one near close to Damascus, the Babylonian one closer to Baghdad. The Babylonian Talmud is bigger, more known, famous, and then sometimes they refer to it Bavli or Talmud. So this development of Talmudic Judaism, which is still with us, and then the recording, commenting, and reading, all this stuff is important. Yeah, this rabbinic literature contains both narrative, legal elements, some mostly legal and then some theological one, anecdotes, wisdom, and so on. I do believe this really took longer, really, to finalize. And then also we see that some other evidence is that, for example, this dominance of Rabbinic Judaism, which we have it till now, it doesn't happen. It took a while. Actually, the full dominance is after Islamic conquest. So exactly you see with the Islamic conquest, which let them return to the Jerusalem. And then the second caliph is somehow known as Judeophile. Uh, and so there were rival groups too, but the rival groups kind of maybe there were rival groups like Karaites, which didn't believe in the authenticity Talmud, because some of the problems Talmud and Quran is engaged with that too. Some of the rejecting some of their interpretations. Quran is engaging with contemporary Judaism, so they impose their understanding to the Torah, and Quran rejecting that or say it is not that. Is someone directly engaging with Talmud. Okay, have this in mind. I think is enough because really we have to go. And then one other thing is that the religious hierarchy, religious structures they have, it seems in Jerusalem was dissolved very sooner than the Babylonian one. So another thing maybe related to Babylonian Talmud is bigger, that they call it in Jerusalem patriarchy, but in Babylonia called exhilarchate. So another word, Greek word. And then this continued. Umayyad supported them, this Jewish religious hierarchy, and they thrived and they continued. They were there. The whole structure was there. So I have this general background for us. We can conclude the rise of rabbinic literature and interpretive tradition marks a clear shift in the story of Judaism. There were certain basic but still, there are some Jewish groups also, we said before, and then during this period, there are detailed. But there are some features which maybe for outsiders and for us to guide who is a Jewish one, something connect all these Jewish groups. And then I think these four markers is good to identify them. One is the monotheism. They claim they have one God, God of Israel. They call it Yahweh. Whatever that sense, at least there's one God. Maybe sometimes they call it God of Israel. At least this is claimed, because we see practice sometimes it wasn't as this clean-cut monotheism, but this is one feature they have. The dietary restrictions. So you want to see a Jewish community, this dietary restrictions is important. We have Muslims dietary restrictions too, but they have much more. This male circumcision is very big among Jewish community. It is not in Quran, but it's also common among Muslims. And the Sabbath, the Sabbath and the observation of the Sabbath, not only is a holiday, is observations. These four, anywhere you find, you can see, okay, you're dealing with some Jewish community. And then that is also the Sabbath is one of the point of dispute and tension between the Quranic view and then the Jewish view. So Quran doesn't recognize Sabbath, neither did they know the observation as much, or doesn't require it for non-Jews, for Muslims. And they are saying, kind of, we had it in discussion in the lecture series on Hikmah. We saw some part clearly, it was the point of tension. Okay, so let's go to the main part now. I hope I can be, yeah, I try to go faster and we have the idea. Okay, but because we limit ourselves to this epigraphy, we really limit the discussion. We can say more if we go to those non-contemporary sources. There are much, much more. But let's see what they tell us. This minimal we start, and then this minimal is relatively certain. It's like certain things you can say, and then see what we have. Uh, so in our discussion, because it's Judaism or Christianity will be more, but our main source of Islamic Arabian Jews. Now we want to go. What we said was generally Judaism, more or less everywhere. Now we're going to Arabian Peninsula, and then epigraphy, inscription engraved by Arabian Jews themselves. We don't have many other sources. Other literary sources, Greek, Syriac, do not talk about much, if they're contemporary, much about Jews in Arabia. Uh, so we said at the beginning of introduction, we have two centers of Judaism. One is Northwestern Arabia and the Hejaz and nearby areas, and the Yemen in the south, in which we'll see the Jewish kingdom of Himyar was an important political force in late antiquity. Uh, the Jews were not monolithic linguistically. So as I said, they identify mostly ethnically, but the language, uh, at least there is an ambiguity. What language they speak in Medina? It seems their daily language was Arabic, although we are mostly talking to the Jews before Medina period. Like here in the United States, the language is English, but they know Hebrew, or that at least they had some reverence for Hebrew, but they don't talk Hebrew. The modern Hebrew was reinvented, or rejuvenated, or regenerated in the last 100 years. So nobody was speaking it. And then many of them speak Aramaic, if they're outside Arabia, and then Greek, if they go to more to Empire, Byzantine Empire. Uh, in Arabia, uh, depends where you are. They may speak and write Greek, Aramaic, Arabic, and Semitic, but the point is that where you take Arabic, Arabic is large. If you go to Palmyra and near Syria, yeah, they may know Greek, because Greek, like English today, was the uh, communication, international lingua franca. Aramaic was usually, or a branch of Aramaic was the language of daily people, or depends, some part Arabic and Semitic in the south. Uh, one important thing is this, because we look at the religious community that is influence. The belief is that the Bible, neither the Old Testament nor the New Testament, pre-Islam, was translated neither to Arabic nor any other South Arabian languages. So that's the consensus for now. It is that the Bible, neither the Old Testament, the Jewish one, nor the New Testament, was not translated in the two main languages which we have in Arabian Peninsula, at least the part we care about. Arabic, which is related in Hejaz, language of Hejaz, and South Arabian languages we said spoken in Yemen. So, and Quran also, you see, kind of refer, this most common ordinary Jews do not know anything about the book, and what they know is what hear from the pulpit, or hear by the rabbis. They can manipulate, and they're telka amaniyahum, have some vague understanding, and that makes sense. So they couldn't have access to the book, they couldn't read it, because the language was Arabic, it was not translated. For mostly these Arabian Jews and Christian, the Bible could be accessed through religious scholars only, who would translate the scripture orally for them in a congregation. So it is like that. For example, in Iran also the Farsi translation wasn't this common. And if nowadays you go to Turkish-speaking areas, I haven't seen much Quran Turkish translations. So maybe 100 years ago, the language of people was Turkish, and then we don't see much translation. So most people relied on the clergy, on the pulpit, which read the Quran and give a speech to them. Uh, So as Sidney Griffiths is a prominent scholar in this part, he's really worth is this authentic here. Text of the scripture portions of them would normally have been in possession of synagogues and churches and shrines and monasteries in the hands of rabbis and priests and monks rather than private hands. So mostly Quran the books, the religious books, Old Testament, New Testament, Torah, was the hand of the clergy. And Aramaic, Syriac, and Arabic-speaking Jews and Christians would thus have heard scriptural passages proclaimed in the course of the celebration of liturgies in their place of study and worship. Uh, and I kind of so the transmission was oral. I want to go faster. They don't read it; they would hear it, and orally would be spread. I mean, definitely there are always exceptions. There must be a few lay people, not necessarily clerical people, which maybe could read, could know these languages, maybe have access private copies, but it seems this is mostly the situation. And then there is the issue what is canonical, non-canonical. I will not go through that, but always you have to know there are different branches, different denominations. Sometimes this have differences, which one is canonical, which is part of Bible, which is not. And then even despite that, in ancient times, even a book wasn't canonical, sometimes used a lot because we don't do anything specific about it. I'm not going to discuss it. Now, to be more specifically, now I've divided discussion in two parts, Northwestern Arabia, which have less information, and then regarding Yemen, we have more information. I try to the less next the time left, we discuss this. Look, Judaism and Jews, it seems, come relatively early to North Arabia. So it seems after the year 130, which they have to leave Palestine, or after the defeat of the second revolt, which Romans kind of exiled them effectively. Um, some of them come to Arabia. And our evidence is mostly epigraphic, um, because we have inscriptions somehow dated. I mean, it doesn't say too much about them, but at least tell them they are there. Uh, and actually, this limitation of only an inscriptions limited us. So if we want to use other sources, um, we can have say more interesting things. For example, there are two books relatively recently, in the last few years, came about the Jews in Medina. Both of them are Israeli Jews who wrote them, and one of them, Meyer Bar Asher, has done a lot of work on Shiism too, Ghulat, extremist Shiis, and also Shia works. Uh, Haggai Mazuz claims that the Jews of Medina were really rabbinic Jews, and which I think, they know Talmud, they follow Talmud. But again, if you rely on inscriptions, which want to do, you cannot conclude that. So I just mentioned it and I skip, which I think is true. And then Michael Lecker, again, which is usually used as secondary sources, um, he says that there is a report that when Prophet Muhammad came to Medina, or the Medina Jews heard the message of Prophet Muhammad, they contacted the exiliac of Babylonia, Hera, the one we said the leader of the Jews under Babylon, and they want to get his help to, kind of ask questions or challenging Prophet Muhammad and so on. And in some report we have, he maybe traveled because, you know, they told him that some guy has claimed he's prophet, and then they have some ideas, maybe some prophet coming from this area, Arabia, and then it seems he has traveled. Lecker thinks this story must have been true elements in it because those ancient Arabic sources uh, have recorded it accurately, recording the titles of that exilic very accurately, which is hard for them to know because from time and space are separate. For example, if somebody writes very clearly, American writes, oh, Saqatul Islam, for example, instead of, I mean, nowadays everybody they call them Ayatollah. If somebody Saqatul Islam and the guy used the words very correctly, especially 100 years ago, which these titles were more applied more accurately, and doesn't referring somebody as Ayatollah and referring to him Saqatul Islam or Jatul Islam, Ayatollah accurately, that means the guy has some more direct knowledge or so on. I'm not sure about the regarding, I mean, proving those a little bit with kind of level of skepticism, Western scholarship, respect Islamic sources or second later sources are, it make it hard. But this could be the Medina Jews, Haggai Mazuz said that, which could be rabbinic. But not everybody agree with him. Then there is Meyer Bar Asher says these Jews were Kohanim and descended of priests. Again, this is also interesting, but I don't think all of them are Kohanim. These Kohanim are really a special class of the Jews, like somewhat like Sadat, and they have very privileges. They're descendant of Aaron. These are the group Kohens, like Kahan. These guys have some privileges. But actually, we have in some stories that one of the main tribes of Jews in Medina, Bani Nazir, if I'm correct, yeah, they were Kohanim. And actually, so this may be true because actually one of the disputes exactly was this. The Quran rebuked them in Surah 2, I think, Ma'idah, that uh, they for if somebody killed somebody else, so if in one of those Bani Nazir, if killed, for example, one Jew from Bani Ghaniyara or Bani Qurayza, because the Bani Nazir were Kohanim, they would not be killed as a punishment. They have to pay the blood money, and they kind of that takes half. And reverse, if uh, the other side killed Bani Nazir or Kohanim, they will be killed and they have to pay extra money. So kind of the Kohanim, the Bani Nazir people were twice the non-Bani Nazir people. So again, this could be true, but I said these are not coming from inscriptions, but I these I think future research which a little bit put that too much skepticism away, keep some healthy dose, can get much more fruitful. But what we have to do, and then I want to go a little bit faster, is that we have to rely on inscriptions. And Robert Hoyland, which is, we have seen him before, worked in these fields, have collected all the inscriptions we have in Northern Arabia, which can be dated and are Jewish. So, inscriptions, Northern Arabia dated or explicitly dated in inscription, or can be dated, and he find about 31 of them, and in one article has lists them with the picture, with the text and translation, and has commented on it. Okay, 31 in one sense we think is not much, but actually with the standard of inscriptions which we have, pre-Islamic, early Islamic Arabia is not bad. Because when I was discussing early Islamic inscriptions, we have only 100 or something dated. They may be 1,000 or more undated. They could be belong the first century, but we cannot certainly dated them. So there were about 100, which we discussed them through them. So he find 31, which is a Jewish one, is good. So I mean, actually, how you want to sell it? The Ilkka Lindstedt says, okay, it's not meager, it's good. Let's work on it. So I will show you some of them to get the taste of it, and then all the conclusions are mediocre. Okay, the importance of this one is this. This is a Nabatean Aramaic, which is the language people Nabatea were talking. It's the part which within Quraysh, at least Arabic language or Arabic script come from there. The Quranic Arabic is come from Nabatea. Here, they were around here, which is Roman Empire captured them and dismantled their kingdom. They were Arab-speaking kingdom. And then in 106 AD. And so it's possible people think Quraysh is a tribe coming from them. They don't want to live under rule of Romans and they want to be free and moved here because we don't know the origin of Quraysh. But everything suggests people here are more connected to here than the south. So the importance of this inscription is very early. That's the one we said the Jews are coming to Arabia very early. The inscription is 42, 43 Common Era. Slash is not there. And it is found in Hegra, which Medina Saleh, and you read, and then kind of you got what it is. Uh, Maybe it's somehow it's contemporary too. This is the tomb with Shuaibaitu, son of Aliyu. Now, this U is common in Nabati Arabic, and then this U they add, like we in south of Iran also we have some people have add this U, Hamidu or so on, and we have sometimes. But this is very ancient, and then the trace of it, we have in the name Amras. Amras is an O at the end, so this is a trace of even, and that's what we can read it because they really write a waf. Shubaytu in Arabic even. Shubaytu son of Aliyu, Aliyu, the Jew, Yahudi, made for himself. So he made a family shrine, and this is an epitaph, the description for that uh, graveside, and for his children and for wife Amirat, his wife. So it should be family, tomb. And they may be buried in it by hereditary title. So yeah, any of his children can be buried over there, but he doesn't want no stranger has the right to be buried in it. Doesn't want none of somebody besides him and his descendants buried here. And if any of the children of Shobaitu mentioned above or their legal heirs seek to write for this tomb a deed of gift or any document, he will have no share in this tomb. This is a modern thing. Even have these family tombs in Iran, based out. They're now some become very expensive. And then suddenly some guy said, okay, let's sell it to some stranger, make some money. He once said, no, no, you cannot do that. So only you cannot just either bury here and nobody. And this was on the first day of an Ab, the third year of King Maliku, king of Nabateans. And then you see, so dating it, the year of the king, so on, that's what we can find when it was. And the kingdom of Nabatea still is there, so it's before 106 AD. And then you see, we have a third name, we studied last lecture. Sometimes somebody prescribe, order it, sometimes the name is there, but then we have who's the writer, who has made this epitaph. Abad Obadat, son of Balahi, made it, the tome or description. So you see very early in Medina, Saleh, 42, 43 Common Era, there. This is even before destruction of the temple. So some of these maybe just come for trade. And then we have another one, for example, in Dedan, later on, we said is Ola, again up north, Medina, northwest. And then the Jewish identity of the family you find by the last name. It simply reads, this is the stele. Again, is the inscription, the plaque, which Yahya, which is the general name, son of Simon, Shamun, has built for his father Simon, who died in the month of Sivan of the year 201. Again, you find another one, which is a little bit the other side. Again, so tell you the Jews were there. They were living there. I mean, Iran, we have it. For example, in Iran, near the Movan, we have one of the oldest cemetery in the world. There are inscriptions about 2,600 years old. So it is related to Babylonian captivity. Uh, uh, a city near the small village or city near city of Damaman. I forgot the name right now, but I know it. Uh, so these are said, okay, the Jews were in Arabia, if you want to be certain, they're early.
Dr. Ghoddoussi, sorry to interrupt you. I have sent you a chat
Yeah,
just so you can plan, if you can maybe take a look at it.
okay, let's see. That's the problem. I don't. Hmm. So I have to stop sharing to. Oh, okay, maybe chat. Okay. Okay. I will go. Okay, thank you. Uh, okay, Mr. Tale. Okay, thank you, Wasale. Okay, I go. okay, I go small, normal pace and then see how much we can go. And then, I think the really bulk of it, inshallah, let's see how it goes. Thank you. Because
Thank you. Sure.
yeah, yeah. You know, the discussion about Christianity will be larger, and the largest and harder one is a politis one. But let's see how we go. Today I go by normal speed. Let's see how much you can cover. If need, I do a little bit next lecture. And then another funerary still dated 203 Common Era from Taima. Again, you see, again, city close up north built for headman. You see the ras. You see how you can see ras of that town. So this Jewish people has become the leader of the town. Either all of them were Jewish or not, I don't know, but it's most probable mostly were Jewish. The cities are usually exclusive. On the basis of his name, he can be classified as Jewish. The text reads that this is the memorial of Isaiah Nebalata, son of Joseph, the headman of Taima, which Amram, this is the name of the father of Moses. We have people with discussion when it become Amram. I think it's the same Amram. And Asmu, again, this W is Mu. His brothers erected for him in the month of Iyar at the year 98 of the province of Arabia. Again, but the year 98 is not Common Era, is 203. So these texts not only said that Jews lived in Western Arabia, but rose to important position. Again, we have another one. These are maybe trading hubs, trading centers. And I told you last time, I think, the Jewish people of Arabia control the wine trade. We have fine wine of Arabia in India too. And then they didn't have the grapes. The grapes sometimes in with Taif, the other important city of Hijaz besides Mecca and Medina. But it seems the exportation to outside Arabia, they had the network. So they maybe get it, processing it, and sending it. And then another text from Hegra, which is again later, now comes to 4th century, mentions individuals being Jewish name. Again, they're both headmen of Hegra Dedan. So you see, as we said, the Islamic sources, it makes sense. These guys are getting prominent in Northern Arabia. They have later Khaybar, and then we know they are in Medina. Hoyland remarks that two inscriptions are very important texts for Northern Arabia Jewry, for they imply that some of them at least were members of the elite of this society. Since the texts are separated by more than 150 years, we can also assume some stability for this office. So you see, we have two texts. One is 356. One is the last one, 203. They have been, you find them in this period, they were head of their city, Dedan, Hagra, Taima. And then we have another one says, blessing to Asur, son of Menahem, which is very Jewish name, and Rabbi. So now we call one of them as Rabbi Jeremiah, Rabbani Yarmi. So you see they are present. The evidence survey of Rabbi Horland is very important, though some of the description are undated and contain only names. Now, here you see Ilkka Lindstedt pushing it. That's what I want to say. There are so much suspicious and put doubts, unreasonable, in my opinion, in front of later sources. But then here give a big pass. I don't agree with him. Maybe I shouldn't say it first. But let's see what she says. I mean, besides that 31 Robert Hoyland edited and published, Leila Nehme also published another one, which is, they claim is Nabatio Arabic inscription. So maybe the script is Nabatio Arabic, but the language is not, we'll see, mixed. And then this has this code name, this one. Evidence adduced above shows the presence of Jewish groups and individuals in Hejaz. What we want to get is what language they were talking, because inscriptions and languages are not always the same. In Iran, a Turkish-speaking person, most probably, if not in Tabriz, they wouldn't put inscription, which is Turkish. Mostly they do Farsi or English or so on. And then here, which we know was the case, Arabs didn't, we have a discussion, didn't write much. Although we know they were Arabic speaking, but they don't, we're talking about non-Jews, they didn't do much Arabic inscription till later. Mostly they did it in Aramaic or Nabato Aramaic. Uh, he wants to claim, I'm not saying his conclusion is wrong, but I'm not sure this evidence really conclusively showing it. Nehemiah inscription shows that some of the Jews were Arabic speaking. We know they were. We know later on they were. We know in the time of Medina they must be. Although they study Hebrew and Aramaic, but in the daily life they're Arabic speaking. We have evidence from pre-Islamic Arabic poetry and other stuff. Okay, this is the text, and I think the part he emphasized is كتب يوم حج الفطير. You know, P is فف, كتب written, يوم day, Hajj. Hajj the same as Hajj we have. Hajj, and then Hajj al-Fatir, P, Tir, Sanat, Mat, and so on. Okay, so I don't want to go too much in it. This is the one I didn't really check to do the reading is correct, but it's not Arabic, you know, it is Nabatu Aramaic or Nabatu Arabic, which Arabic Quran come from it. You know, we feel this, well, okay, we're familiar with it, but it's not the language, is not actually Arabic or it's a mix. He translates it, Ya may Sholai, son of Aushu, be remembered in well-being and may be safe in presence of the Lord of the world. And this writing he wrote the day of the feast of the unleavened bread. Okay, unleavened bread is Fatir, year 197 of their calendar, which comes 303 common era. Look, so he wrote something, he did a prayer to the Lord of the world is monotheistic, and he write for like on the day of Mab'as yesterday, I got excited and go write something, or day of Hajj, or day of Eid al-Qurban, or Eid al-Asha, or Eid al-Fitr. But look, what is here he claim is this. What is important to note that even though the rest of the inscription is written in Aramaic, so the inscription as a whole is Aramaic. Language is not Arabic, and it's using Nabato Aramaic or Nabato Arabic script. It is the script, the Arabic script, the script the Quran was written early, or early Islamic documents written came out of it. You know, they adopted that script, like Turkish people. Turkey adopted some Latin script and make this new Turkish script. They did that, but the most of the writing is not. That's although it's so close, sometimes it's hard. Okay, but it's not Arabic. And then, but he claims only one phrase is Arabic. So look, what is important to note that even though the rest of the description is written in Aramaic, the word referring to feast of the unleavened bread, which is the word people use, is related to Passover, as week connected to the week of Passover. And Arabic is Hajj al-Fatr, Hajj al-Fatr. Now, Hajj is the same word as Hajj, but it seems in the Hebrew was not used as pilgrimage, but as feast. Which can this change happen? You know, so it is naturally true that the word Hajj is in the sense of feast is Hebrew. But I would suggest it's Ilkka Lindstedt. I would suggest the probable word was already used in Arabic among Jews in this sense. What is this claiming? Even this Hajj is not in the sense Arabic is using Hajj, but he claims this phrase is Arabic, and then so the guy used Arabic phrase is bilingual. But you know, this is not evidence because now we have Valentine's Day or Halloween coming Farsi. And then I say I'm going to go to Halloween party Farsi. It doesn't mean I know English. This is so flimsy. There are cases. Look, when we talk, especially when we are here in North America, when we talk Farsi, we use many English words or vice versa. Nowadays, because of internet, everybody's doing that. They talk Farsi English words, but doesn't mean they're fluent or English speaking. There are better evidence, but I'm surprised. The author, is so much critical or suspicious or secondary sources. Now he wants to push that these or find evidence that the Jews in Arabia, Arabic speaking, which they are, but not based on this inscription. And then he says, I would suggest that we can infer two things on the basis of the text. Sholai, son of Ausha, was Jewish because of the name and what he celebrated. This is true because this is a Jewish holiday. Arabic was his spoken language, although he knew how to write Nabatean Arabic. I don't, maybe he was Arabic, but I don't think, but just this phrase, because he wrote everything in Aramaic, which I said still Arabs, which are non-Jews and talking Arabic, they used to write inscription in Nabatean Arabic. Now, late antique inscription in Nabatean scripture are often a mixture of Arabic and Aramaic. This text engraved by Sholei, son of Ashur, is no exception. He pushing it too much here, but okay, that was interesting. So summary of the evidence of northern part, if you just go to inscriptions, we can conclude some very basic general points. The epigraphic records such as the Jews settled in Northwestern Arabia early in late antiquity, if not before. By 303, Common Era Southern Arabian Jews had adopted Arabic as a language. He wants to push it by this because this is 303. But I don't think this is correct. Maybe true. I'm more inclined, but maybe 303 is a little bit early. But anyway, he claims by just one Arabic phrase, al-Hajj al-Fitr, which even Hajj is not used in Arabic sense, is using in Hebrew sense. So al-Fitr, I don't know, I don't know the root. This, no, yeah, not Fatr, yeah, not Fitr, Fatr, leavened bread. Uh, uh, yeah, the bread that they don't put yeast on it or something like that, it doesn't uh, pops out or something. They have the story with they have to move out of Egypt. They have to rush. They couldn't give time to the dough be prepared. So this is that how they're remembering. But okay, let's just read what the conclusion is. But some Arabian Jews had adopted Arabic as a language, or at least one of the language they spoke and wrote. Unfortunately, the evidence available presently does not take us further. Okay, because we want to keep the discussion limited. If I want to really go, like those other two writers use secondary sources, late sources, we can say much more. But however, to the dated epigraphic evidence does not post. But one interesting thing happens, and that's the bigger challenge. All these 31 they have, and then the extra one, Leila Nahme find 32. None of the epigraphic ones date after 4th century. They all ended by 300 something. That is not necessarily why this has happened. You know, why we don't get any more. We have from 30, 40 AD to 300 something AD, 350 or something. I haven't gone through all the list of Robert Hoyland, but none of them passes the 4th century. None of them are 400. Why? This is a puzzle in this all epigraphy, and then sometimes they're getting big conclusions out of it, especially when we go to polytheistic one. But there is something here too. I think something is not very classy now to put epigraphy or somebody, because we see it in different situations around the same time something is happening. Because I mean, you cannot say Jews disappear, Jews leave Arabia, so because they're not right, they don't write epigraphy. No, Jews are there. And the number has increased. Maybe writing epigraphy is not cool anymore, or they don't find time to do it. Somebody ban it. I'm not sure. Because we see Arabic poetry, Constitution of Medina, and Quran all suggest we have Arabic Jews in Medina. We have, I mean, the whole Khaybar. I mean, we shouldn't go this too. Everything suggests that lots of Arab Jewish people are living over there. Why we don't have inscription about 200 years from, I mean, beginning of 5th century to about 200 years to the best of prophet. We don't have any more Arabic inscriptions in the Northwestern Arabia. We don't have anything in 5th or 6th century. Although we know Jews are there, we don't know. And then the issue of the Arabic poetry, it's becoming a little bit technical. Okay, we said this is the second one. There are Jewish recording of poems from in Northern Arabia from Jews. So in the corpus of the pre-Islamic Arabic poetry, there are a number of poems that attribute to individuals identified as Jewish. And then the most famous one that people have worked on it is this guy, Samuel. This is Samuel, English. Samuel, you know, Abu Sam, Uncle Sam comes from here, Samuel. But Shamuel, if we go to Arabic Hebrew one, Shamuel ibn Adiyah. Now, he has a divan, so they have collected his poem. Robert Hoyland says, okay, he's Jewish, but his poetry doesn't have much Jewishness in it. For example, some famous Muslim, I mean, singers nowadays, you know, maybe do not have much, but they're Muslim, but that doesn't have the poem doesn't have much Islamic thing in it per se. And then Robert Hoyland says, what is in poetry we find is compatible in sentiment and style to pre-Islamic Arabic poetry in general, lack any specific historical detail or concrete religious expression. So because we want to see the religious views, we cannot get. Uh, but Ilkka Lindstedt disagrees with Robert Hoyland. But then I think he's not very good. He claims, no, no, you're wrong. There's lots of poems, and if you go to some of the poems, you can see religious sentiment, so they're good. But I think again here he hits an obstacle. So he says, as for the latter religious expression, this is definitely not true, since there is a large amount of that in the somewhat surviving collection of poems. But the problem is that some of those, because these poems were recorded later, and the whole issue of recording much later, whether they have been uh, edited, because some of those poems which show some religious reflection, yeah, they're reflecting about death and afterlife. But people say these are very similar to Muslim views. So these poems were recorded and in the books later on, somebody maybe edited, make it classy and suitable for time. For example, your uncle said some poem and then you want to publish it. And then you see, okay, these parts which are not very classy, maybe throw away and then add it a little bit. I mean, some people suggested the poem was penned by a later Muslim scholar, perhaps a descendant of Samuel. Yeah, it could be, because especially people are sensitive. If descendants are become Muslim, maybe they do that. But even they could be Jewish, because the Jewish views and theology and everything was very much influenced for a few centuries from the Quranic and Islamic ones. They start to understand their stories differently. I said it a few times when, for example, angels come to the Abraham. The Bible clearly says they eat. Abraham offer them food, offer them meat, and all the angels eat it. And the Quran completely is reversed. Said they don't eat, and Abraham and his wife get scared. Why these human guests? Apparently, human guests coming far away, and we bring them food. They don't eat, and then at that time, because is make a lot of sacrifice to kill the sheep and prepare it and bring it, and it's completely disrespectful and a hostile act if I bring you food and you don't eat it. And they start to worry, they were older, that these young guys maybe have hostile intentions, and the angels then come out and say, don't worry, we are angels. And then the Jews notice, okay, the problem is that how angels can eat meat. They notice, oh yeah, Quran maybe has some point in it, so we have to fix it. They start to say, no, no, Bible doesn't say, Torah doesn't say they eat meat. They apparently came to the Abraham, they're eating meat, which again is not word. So I'm saying they corrected, they adjusted their views, the interpretation under Islamic text. So it could be this poem was edited. So here, because he wants to push something, he wants to go beyond inscription, he removes his traditional uh, doubt, these later sources away, and he wants to push it. But he has to agree because it's detailed. I'm not going to go through that. The corpus of Arabic poetry composed by Jewish authors is rather thin and may contain poems that are inauthentic. He has to concede back, like, we cannot go with this poetry. Okay, I was like, I'm sorry. So maybe, I mean, one way we have, I continue with Himyar.
Do you maybe if you want to continue by another 10 minutes, and as we discussed, maybe you want to maybe we go for 6 sessions.
Okay.
But I mean, you can go for another. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how long more you have from your presentation.
Yeah, I think some of it will spill to the other one. Let's go to 15 minutes and then
Yeah.
maybe
Okay. Yeah,
maybe
that
I
makes
see.
sense.
Yeah,
Inshallah.
okay, because now this is the important part, at least finishing the maybe rise of Hemyer. uh, because this is the southern part and about history southern part. But although I've discussed this topic a little bit thoroughly in the Quran and Yemen series, if somebody seen those series, we discuss it. But okay, this is a little bit different angle, and I think is an interesting topic and is usually less known. So, Yemen is the only part of Arabian Peninsula able to sustain dry farming and with vast natural resources, was a rather affluent place in antiquity and late antiquity. I said Romans call it Arabia Felix, prosperous Arabia. And then culturally, linguistically, pre-Islamic Yemen was different from the more northern parts of the peninsula. That's what I'm saying. In one sense, maybe we cannot consider them technically Arabs. In one sense, I mean, how you define it? If you have two Pichi, for example, Gilaki and Mazanis are different, but they are very close living each other. So depend. But yeah, they are really different. For the most part, the Yemeni spoke and wrote in South Arabian languages, which most important was Sabaik. And we have lots of inscription of this. Because today we want to limit ourselves on Jewish ones, we are a little bit limited. But we have lots of South Arabian languages, Sabaik, and even interestingly, one of the new coffee houses were opened in our area, Dearborn. Uh, I saw them, they put really big, interesting one of these Sabaik script, because also there were two types, as I said, they use one for monumental one, one for orthographic, one is the curved cursive alphabet, one is less cursive printing type. I was interesting for me. The guy put a huge kind of light all this alphabet up there as decoration. So Yemeni coffee house. So they were talking South Arabian languages. The most important was Sabaik. Even Himyar kingdom, which we'll see, they kept the language Sabaik. Whereas the inhabitant of North spoke North Arabian languages. What are these North Arabian languages also is a discussion. Because North Arabian languages at the end up Arabic. I didn't discuss it. Maybe when they go to polytheism, I will discuss more there. But Aramaic or Nabatio Arabic or Nabatio Aramaic and Safaitic, which all of these are maybe the ancestor language or somehow very close related to Arabic. But Southern Arabian languages are not as close. I'm going to show it again. Look, and I'll maybe show you another one is better. Yeah, look, this is Old South Arabian, and then this is modern South Arabian, which this one puts much farther, and then this is Arabic one. Let me see here. I think it's better one. So this one, look, we have Sabaean, Old South Arabian, and Sabaean Gi is the language in Ethiopic one. And so these are the other branch we have. And then I think this is more accurate. And then Arabic is here. But again, all of these branches have details. So here, this diagram has shown the old South Arabians more. For example, Mehri is a language, modern South Arabia. You talk in Oman or Yemen. So what we are saying is that the languages was different, as different Hebrew and Arabic different. These South Arabian languages are different from Arabic. Quran has some words like Habariyun, other one for Gi is the language Ethiopic one, but really the languages are different. So conclusion was that whereas the inhabitants North spoke North Arabian languages, the two language bundles are part of Semitic family, but they're not very closely related. Alongside Ethiopic, South Arabian forms South Semitic subdivision, while the ancient North Arabian languages or Old Arabic are part of Central Semitic. So nowadays we see they're separated from each other sooner. Though the late antique South Arabian inscriptions are written Sabaik, it appears that this was a prestige literary register. People spoke different dialects of ancient South Arabian language. So although most of the inscription in Saudi Arabia, including the Jewish ones we saw, are Sabaik, uh, but uh, but maybe they talk differently. Again, if somebody wants to write inscription plaque, if the language is Turki or Kurdi or different dialects of Gilaki, they don't write it like that. They write in Farsi. So maybe people in Mazandaran they talk Mazani or Gilan talk Gilaki, but when they want to plaque or especially engraving, they do it in Farsi. But the evidence of them is at the moment is unclear. There were also Arabic speaking communities in Yemen. Some tribes have come down, but it should remark that no South Arabian texts or parchment or papyri survive that from the period under discussion, though one supposes that these writing materials are also Yemen. So we only have inscriptions. We don't get any parchment or papyri survive. Although we have a Quran and Arabic and later survive Arabic, but it seems we don't have South Arabian one. Maybe because the weather was more wet or humid and destroyed these other forms. And then one thing I want to kind of finish by this distinction, as I said earlier, Yemenis did not view themselves as Arabs before the coming of Islam. After Islam, things changed. It was prestigious to be Arab. And neither should the modern scholarship call them that. Though the Sabaic inscriptions refer to Arabs or Arabs or nomads, they're always groups that live outside Yemen proper. What is more, the Yemenis formed political units and states much earlier than they appear in the north. Their income was secured because Yemen produced, for instance, frankincense or myrrh, valuable products in antiquity that were transported for instance, to Rome. The trans-Arabian trade is intimately tied to the utilization of camel as pack animal. This is important. In antiquity, there were various kingdoms in the south, Yemen, but the era we are looking about 200, 300 after AD, which you have the discussion of it when we're doing Quran Yemen, the kingdom of Himyar unified. So we have three regions, which still is in Yemen, because you see the difference between south of Yemen and north of Yemen, Houthis, another group. We have Hazaramaut, which is more to the east, close to Oman. And then you have Himyar, is a little bit to the south, middle, and then we have Saba and the Sana'a, queen of Sheba, stuff like that, more up to the north. And then Himyar, people from Himyar, the kingdom from Himyar was able to dominate and unify the kingdom. I mean, a little bit you see is reluctantly, especially the people of Hazaramaut occasionally would find the time they rebelled later on. But for 200 years, they have the stable kingdom of Himyar, which is the important part we're discussing. So around 300 Common Era, it had vanquished the other political powers in Yemen. Himyarids did that and ruled over much of the South Arabia. It was the first time that South Arabia was ruled by a single kingdom. So maybe except ancient times, I don't know, Queen of Sheba, but it seems modern times we have record is that. The Yemeni kingdom of Himyar is characterized by its close and sometimes hostile relationship with the kingdom of Aksum in Ethiopia that had converted to Christianity. This is an important story. We had it in those series, but okay, it's important. Look, Ethiopia, which is the other side of Red Sea, become Christian. Ethiopia had tried to conquer Yemen before this period when they were polytheists. They have some land claims, or they listed always Yemen as the area of our jurisdiction. Like nowadays, for example, Erdogan or other people mentioning these regions that belong to Ottoman Empire or so on. The Ethiopians always claimed Yemen is, and Yemenis didn't like it. And then Ethiopians, when converted to Christianity, Yemenis was, as the slides will explain, decided to convert to Judaism. I think becoming monotheistic was more chic or fashionable, but they want to distinguish between Ethiopians. So the extent to which Christianity also spread some part of Yemen, this early can only be speculated. You know, Ethiopia become Christian. We anticipate some Christianity in Yemen too, maybe like Najran, but we don't know how much. Firm evidence of Christianity in the south is difficult to find before the 5th century, late 5th century, so about 100, 150 years later. However, interestingly, and for reasons that we do not have a clear grasp, towards the end of the 4th century, around this era, Yemen also, or at least its ruling class, adopted Judaism. Yeah, there is a dispute that whether it is the ruling class of Yemen, this Himyar kingdom, want to be prestigious, on par with the Ethiopian kingdom and empire, Aksum Empire, they adopt Judaism, or all the people underneath change to Judaism. This monotheistic inscription is monumental, is official religion, but the people maybe not necessarily all be monotheistic. But I think the truth is mixed, and then after passage of time, usually we have hadith ascribed to the Prophet, al nasu ala dini mulukim, people follow the religion of the rulers. I think we have other secondary evidence that many of them converted to Judaism. So as I said last lecture, for example, Yasser, father of Ammar Yasser, Yasser and Sumayya, the first martyrs in Islam, or Huzayfat Yaman, there are some evidence, at least that Michael Lecker, although he's Israeli Jew, they claim that they most probably were Jewish, but Arab, not ethnically Jewish. I don't think so. That they were Jewish before Islam, and then when Islam came, they become Muslim. We know this big tribe of Hamdan, which also Husis nowadays claim are from descendants. They become Jewish too, and they were the loyal, very important loyal supporters of Imam Ali. So they were monotheists in sense, the Jewish monotheists, but Arab ethnicity, but taking up a Jewish monotheist religion, and then they converted to Islam. I will finish. New religious vocabulary was borrowed from Aramaic and Hebrew. When these guys start to convert, they start to pick up some terminology for this new monotheism, like Amin, which we have it now, and also Shalom, Salam, greetings, peace, and Salat, prayer, and then you can see Salat, which we have it. So all these picked up from Arabic and Hebrew go to that Sabaic language, and we see description. This might have been to draw contrast to and from a distinct identity from Christian Ethiopia. From that point onward, all surviving evidence from Yemen is monotheist. Again, we saw no Jewish inscription in the north after 4th century. Then down in south, we see that there is no polytheistic inscription anymore, and everything is monotheistic. But the word monotheistic is a little bit general sometimes because it's type of monotheism, whether it's Christianity, Judaism is vague, but everybody agrees. In Yemen, it's mostly Jewish bent. In Ethiopia, it's 100% Christian bent. Though it is naturally possible that switch from polytheism to monotheism was much more piecemeal among the population than the extant data would suggest. So it says we cannot say sharply the moment these rulers in Ethiopia switched from polytheism to Judaic monotheism, which is Judaic, all the population changed. But then we don't see an inscription. I think it was an official ban. And I think that official ban, I feel, has some effect in the northern parts of it too. My theory is that because we'll see there is a puzzle about the inscriptions in these 2 centuries, 5th and 6th. In the north, you don't get Jews put any more inscription. In the south, you don't get any polytheistic anymore. And then you're comparing, especially in the north, we have a little bit up north, especially we have zillions of polytheistic inscription, and they stop too. That's the puzzle when you go we're discussing polytheistic view. So let me finish it soon. Before this, Yemenis were polytheists worshipping. Before this conversion to Christianity, what was the situation? Yemenis were polytheistic, worshiping among others Asar, Ashtar. This must be Ashtar, TH, but the pronunciation. The sun goddess Shams, Shamash Shams, we have it many places, and moon god Al-Maga. The Southern Arabian deity Wad is mentioned in the Quran along with other unidentifiable deities. This verse could have a lecture itself. I'm not sure of time. I may do that. This is a very fascinating verse in Surah An-Nur. Quran, despite of this economy, and mentions the name of 5 idols of the time of Noah. The name of Prophet Muhammad only come 4. Why Quran have to mention 5 idols of the time of Noah, not even contemporary? But it seems the records suggest, we know that literary records suggest these deities exist in Saudi Arabia, but it seems in inscriptions they find Wad, which is important. I may try to put one of those half a lecture, quarter lecture about this, because this is very important when we go to the polytheistic view in Saudi Arabia. So it is possible that the traditional South Arabian religions were practiced among the minority of the Yemeni population until the life of Prophet Muhammad. even though they vanished more or less completely from the South Arabian inscription that are dated between 385-60. You don't get any inscription which is polytheistic, and Quran doesn't say what was South Arabia. It says Noah. But okay, it must be some trace left. The Quran see a reason to mention it, and then secondary sources like Kalbi mentioning it. But we didn't have find except what there are 4 names over there, which is so this is a puzzle a little bit. Does really polytheism completely disappeared? And then what is the situation is? As I said, Quran projects the worship of that to the community around the Noah, 3,000 years, 4,000 years before Prophet Muhammad. There have been some suggestion in scholarship there was a henotheistic development already in 3rd century with Al-Magha becoming the chief deity. Gradually this polytheistic pantheon moved toward at least one, if it's not monotheistic, at least have one supreme God. One is really different. One is on the top. This is sometimes called henotheism. But again, the evidence is let me just give me 1 second. I can give you the better definition. Look, worship of one God while accepting others exists. Henotheism is this. So, monotheism is belief in one God only, which is Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and polytheism, belief in multiple gods. Henotheism, worship of one God while accepting other exists. So, in this sense, maybe emphasize shouldn't be on supreme one, but usually people worship us as the supreme one. I only worship one God, not many. But okay, accept the other ones. Sometimes the language of Jewish scripture feels henotheistic because they're calling God of Israel. Okay, so Israelis have one God, and then other people have their own gods. But I have to worship my own God because He take care of me. If I worship other gods, I have disrespect my own God, and my God will punish. So, what was it the case? Again, this needs more than inscriptions. Although there have been progress, this is important when we want to discuss not the Judaism in Arabia, but polytheism or Gentile religion, Arabic religion in Arabia. Already in the 3rd century, with Al-Magha becoming the chief deity above all other gods, but the evidence of this currently slide. Yeah, okay. I will stop here, and then I go with continuation of Judaism next lecture, and then maybe we transfer to Christianity. Thanks for your patience. Let me stop here.